Hi, I'm John Hanula. I'm going to use my notes because I want to get to introducing Susan and get into a dialogue on a really cool project. And I'm going to try to prevent myself from riffing too much because there's so much to say about this. So a bit on my background. I've been in LA for about 35 years. I'm an architect, I'm a civil engineer. I'm with Stantec right now. And I've seen a whole lot during this 35-year run in Los Angeles. We're in, I'm going to call it a defining moment, not the defining moment. I hope we're not in the defining moment. But, you know, going back to what I saw when we pivoted to responding to the Clean Water Act, and I'm old enough to be touching the last phases of the infrastructure that went into place for that, and not too old to be the policy driver in the early 70s that did it. But the pivot right now has been to kind of a one water approach in Southern California and even evolving into more of a pure water approach in Southern California. And all this is enabled by new tech. It's enabled by new thinking, and it's being driven by new leadership. The driving forces with all this for the changes, we talk about reliability of historic water supplies. We talk about climate chaos from weather changes. We talk about political shifts. We talk about logistic shifts, people moving in, out, around. All of this really defines the infrastructure needs to address it, and it's off the charts. Just look at the water programs in the state of California that have been already identified. We've got about $21 billion being talked about with just the Los Angeles Pure Water Program. We've got about another 10 with Pure Water SoCal before it's done. And I absolutely know Devin and Selmo Collins over at DWP are not losing any sleep of how to find that money. When you add in the broader state issues up in Northern California, we get into the Delta Conveyance Program and sites. That's another, $30 billion. We've got isolated programs for responding to the water issues and the transportation issues and all the other issues. But the water issues alone are maybe another $10 billion just in Southern California alone. San Francisco PUC is embarking on another $10 billion of water and wastewater stuff. So we've got this money floating around, and it's all targeted on the 2022 state document on water supply strategy that came out that has hard metrics. 800,000 acre-feet of new reuse by 2030. 4 million acre-feet of new storage. And I think that the headwinds to that become some of these things are so long in getting in place that you have to be mindful of the schedule and what's going to happen between now and 2030 or 2040. How many more drought cycles are we going to see? So what can we get in place that responds to these needs more immediately? I've been involved with Cadiz for about 25 years, one way or another. Pretty intimate with the details, the current plan, the current schedule. It's a firecracker, for sure. Since Susan arrived as the CEO of Cadiz about 3 years ago, I've seen more get done and more advance than in the other 20 or so that I've been part of this project. And again, it's a cool project. Right now, if you don't know where we are, we're in the final stages of bringing on a construction partner for what's going to be, if I'm internal, I'd call it a $1 billion program. I think for the record, right now we're tracking at about $900 million of new infrastructure that's going into place. And it's not about anything out of that context. It's just a phasing of the elements of the program because you have to do something if you want something else to get done. So we're already started, and we're probably going to bring a contractor on board in the next week or so. So we're going to have a collaborative delivery model. I think we got a great team in place. And we're going to pivot over to subsequent phases of the program, so everything's going to be spinning by the end of this year. So what will we get out of it? The Mojave Groundwater Program, we're talking about it as having one of the greatest impacts to the California water system since the State Water Project went into place. And I'll kind of give a thought on that when I close, but you're going to get over 300 miles of conveyance pipelines that accesses and unlocks 2 million acre-feet of sustainable yield groundwater under the Cadiz farm. It's going to be an interconnecting conveyance highway between the State Water Project and the Colorado River Aqueduct. So we don't have to take the Abacus out to do credit trading anymore. Now to Susan. This lightning rod project, Susan's been really a defining force in advancing things to where we are today. And without her, we'd still be thinking more than doing. It is this lightning rod project, and we're a publicly traded company at Stantec, so I get called in and I hear, how do we rationalize this project with all of the previous headwinds of environmental and sustainability issues, and can you really build it, and who's going to pay for it? And one of my comments when they asked me about Susan, I said, she is a weapon for mass construction. And I think that's what I see. She's driving this thing through all of the headwinds. She's built a reputation for her career of getting things done. Failure is not an option. And this is in an industry where a lot of times, that sometimes the headwinds are the things that easily kill these projects. Yeah, for one thing, talk about creativity. During the killing of the Keystone Pipeline, Susan went out and purchased 180 miles of cheap pipeline abandoned in North Dakota. And I get the call, Hanula, can you get a couple people? I think I can buy this pipeline so cheap I could knock down the project cost, but you got to tell me if it's worth a damn. So we did all the work, and you said, yeah, and for significantly less of new material. And who wants to buy steel today with the tariffs going into place? We've got that locked in. That is a locked cost for most of the conveyance material that Cadiz will buy as a self-procured owner item. So when we get back to the owners, the opponents of this thing, this is a game-changing project, I think, and it's provocative, right? There's a lot of people who want to talk about it and tell me what we can and can't do. Susan is going through the process of locking in all the challenges to funding. We're on a firecracker schedule. $900 million is not critical to get into the ground, but to do it in 4 years really poses a lot of logistical challenges, and we're overcoming all that stuff. I'm confident. Susan's not going to let anything get in the way of this groundwater bank getting built. So, again, I believe the impact of this bank will punch way above its weight class. Somebody used that term earlier today. I know Susan punches way above her weight class. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to frame up a couple questions and let her give you the real opinion of things. So we want to do it on the mic? Sit down, or you want me to?
Sit down. You already got the job. You don't have to butter me up anymore. Never let your owner's engineer introduce you at a conference.
So, look, we've talked so many times about the water supply problem, and just wondering, is it really an infrastructure problem to get the water where we need it? So how do you see it?
You've heard me say it quite a few times. We do not have a water supply issue. This is called the water planet for a reason. And the water supply issue is not an engineering issue. It's a financing issue. You've got the State Water Project was built 75 years ago, and it was financed by all by state bonds that were paid back by state water contractors over a 75-year period, right? And now we're asking the same customers to put up tens and tens of billions of dollars to fix a system, to get half the water that they're entitled to pay twice as much to get half the water they're entitled to, and it breaks the bank. It makes no fiscal sense. So the way we have to approach the water system, the water network in this era of new hydrology is to figure out, on a blank slate, where do you need storage to capture atmospheric river waters? Not all storage means new water supply. Sometimes storage is just storage, where you need to actually, capture that flood water and put it into the delta. If you don't, and I'll start with one of my punchlines. If we don't get Sites Reservoir built, the delta will not survive. The water from Sites is the only location where you can capture the new hydrology of the state in Northern California. And if you're not putting new water into the delta, you'll never get a delta fixed. There won't be a delta to fix. And people are asking me, why do I talk about sites when I'm giving these conversations about water and talking about my project? It's because the water system is a network. And when one part of the network is broken, the entire system fails. If we don't get water, if we don't capture more water in storage north of the delta and put more water into the delta, the entire rest of the state is going to suffer. We won't be able to finance the infrastructure to fix it. So, what is Cadiz today? We're new water supply. We have existing pipeline assets, and we're bringing public-private financing to the picture. I think you've seen this before, but that outline of the watershed of where Cadiz is, that's a 2,000 square mile watershed in San Bernardino County. That's half the size of the county of Los Angeles. There's 30 to 50 million acre feet of water in storage in San Bernardino County. That's twice the size of Lake Mead when it's full, right? It's like the design capacity of Lake Mead is 28 million acre feet. You've got 30 to 50 million acre feet of water in San Bernardino County today, and every drop of water is evaporating. It's a closed basin. So every drop of water that falls inside that watershed has one exit point. That's across a place called Fenner Gap, which is where Cadiz Ranch is located. The New York and the Providence Mountains are the high points in here. That's 7,500-foot elevation and 7,200-foot elevation. And that's where the headwaters are for the water that goes down into the watershed. What made Cadiz controversial 20 years ago, because nobody needed water, right? Who needed water 20 years ago? We were rolling in water. But the weapon that was used to kill the project was bad science. They basically said, oh, it's in the Mojave Desert. There's no water in the desert. If you look at Death Valley, it's 2 inches of rain a year. There can't possibly be water in the desert. We're in that right area in the red circles down there. We are not in the rain shadow of Sierras. It's the only part of Southern California in the desert out there that is not in the rain shadow of the Sierras or in the San Gabriel Mountains. So the amount of groundwater and the amount of precipitation we get is dramatically different than any other part of the Southern California. We get Gulf storms. Hurricane Hillary took massive amounts of water were taken out roads and bridges down at Cadiz Ranch. There is a massive amount of water. The snow melt and the precipitation are moving south. So your infrastructure has to be able to capture where the water is going. This is current data on precipitation in the New York mountains at the top of our watershed. And you can see by the dark purple lines on the right, those are the atmospheric rivers. The precipitation in this part of the state is actually going up. This is the Providence Mountains, the second mountain range down there. Again, look at the pattern. The rain is actually moving south and increasing in this part of the state. So what you have is the most prolific resource in the southwestern U.S., in California. If you look at the total amount of this watershed system, there's almost 1 million acre feet per year of precipitation happening, and there's a 1,000-year water supply sitting in San Bernardino County. So we have to start looking at the physical infrastructure as a network and investing in the infrastructure in a way that every project is regional. It's not, one project serves one community, and we have hundreds of miles of pipeline that move water from, hundreds of miles away to serve my customers. But we have to start looking at each of the regions and think, what role can it play in adapting to the new technology? Sorry, I just blew through my entire slides while you were sitting here.
You did. So we've got so much of the headwinds taken care of, but what do you see as the ultimate solution for this?
Well, I had to take, this project was so controversial, and, my good friend, Senator Feinstein, for whom I worked, I was her communications director. We were very close right up until the end. But she made it impossible for anyone to even talk about this project, which is why this is the best kept secret in water. But I had to figure out how to get this project built and not have to ask permission from anybody. I had to figure out how to get it financed. And the key is, how do you finance this type of infrastructure? So we're introducing a public-private partnership model where, if you're creating new water supply, you have new revenue streams. You have new revenue streams, you can bring in private sector capital. That's not true for what we're doing in Northern California, where you're really not bringing in new water supply. But in Southern California, you can bring in private capital. So we cut a deal with some tribes. It took me 3 years to get a meeting with some of the tribes just to undo the damage that was done on this. But once we realized that the Native American tribes, with a lot of water rights, and a lot of liquid capital from gaming, that they were the perfect public partner for a public-private partnership. So that was the big pivot point for us. We're now forming a public-private partnership, an LLC, where equity investors will come in and provide about $400 million in equity capital to get the projects going, and that was the big pivot point for us. So we've got our initial tribal investors, and we're bringing in other equity capital under it. So private equity capital will come in as long as it's a public agency sponsor. We're bringing in private capital to do it, and that's what unlocked it. So it allowed us to move to construction. We actually started construction 3 years ago. We built out the well field, we bought the pipeline, we just signed a deal to buy a fleet of linear generators. So we're moving forward with the construction, come hell or high water. That's how.
So we've got the financing lining out. We've got the technical issues plumb and square. What rules are we going to have to break to continue moving things forward?
If I find a rule, I'll break it. I can't remember all the ones, but I mean, the key thing here is the key thing here is collaboration. This is an integrated project, and so, when I told the founders of Cadiz 20 years ago when I was in the governor's office, and we were trying to get sites and temperance flats funded 20 years ago, I said, with Cadiz, somebody needs to want the water. It can't be a private company trying to build a water supply project. Private companies don't build water projects. And so when I came in, there's so much water in this aquifer that I started working collaboratively with all the communities that we can serve. So we went to San Bernardino County and we cut a deal. They wanted all the water to stay in San Bernardino County. So we said, okay, so every agency in San Bernardino County has a ROFR, a right of first refusal for all the water from the Cadiz project. And there's enough water that we went to all the communities up in the high desert area, Barstow, Victorville, Adelanto, and basically said, you can have water for free. You just join the Joint Powers Authority that helps us use municipal financing and apply for whatever grants for the local infrastructure, and you can have the water at cost, whatever the cost is of moving it. So we started bringing in all these different communities to develop regional infrastructure that will, and that was really the key, was buying in that kind of collaboration. So the ultimate goal here is we're not one project. We have the main groundwater bank in eastern Mojave. We've got the northern pipeline, which the first reach goes up to Barstow. where we can interact with the Mojave Water Agency, the groundwater banks there. Right now, they're pumping water from the State Water Project, and these are not wealthy communities, and in order to refill their groundwater banks, and they are locked. They have no access to Lake Mead. They have no access to backup supplies. So by collaborating with these communities, Victor Valley Wastewater Authority just signed just approved joining forces with us in a joint powers authority so we can issue municipal financing. But we will be working with them on collaborative recharge basins, integrating our pipelines. I'd like to reverse the flow of the Mojave River pipeline so we can drop water down directly into the East Branch. Our northern pipeline crosses the LA Aqueduct, goes up to the State Water Project, and we want to be able to bring water down, capturing some of those flood flows from atmospheric rivers, and basically connect the groundwater banks in the high desert, so we can move water in two directions, into these major new groundwater banks, and then Victor Valley can use they have a lot of resources as recycling, stormwater capture, wastewater treatment. So they're producing new water there that they'll be able to make available not only for themselves, but they'll be able to make it available for other communities as well. We're going to use the Keystone Pipeline to build a 4-pipeline system to the Colorado River Aqueduct that allows water to be moved in 2 directions. And then there are other pipelines at Cadiz that and we'll be looking to acquire new storage banks and new pipelines. We're building hydrogen out at Cadiz with solar, green hydrogen and solar, so that'll help us fuel we'll be able to use some of that for our well field and our project, but it's also resources that'll be available for the region. So this collaboration with Victor Valley is a really key element of what we're doing, and I think ways in which we can work with other agencies. Each of the agencies we all have water supply, we have conveyance, we have storage. Where we overlap, we're now going to collaborate, we're going to bring money to the table and revenues to the table to help buy generation and buy facilities at a discount, at a lower cost, and we'll be sharing the cost of these facilities. So we'll share solar, we'll share pipeline, we'll share pumping stations. So it lowers the cost for everyone, and it builds a regional network of groundwater banks. The idea is to have multiple groundwater banks, and then multiple pipelines that can move water in different directions, where we're combining our resources to be able to provide get access to very low cost of capital. And we're going to finance all the feasibility studies, we'll finance the technical studies, and we don't have to wait. These agencies don't have to wait for grants to go figure out how they're going to build these projects. We'll finance them. So this, expanding this collaborative business model is the key, I think, to getting, and we'll be online faster than almost any project in the state, because I don't have to wait I've already got the permits, we've already been through 20 years of litigation. So we're not fast. It's like, we just started earlier than the other projects, so we're through our litigation hell. But the fact is that everything we do, we have to integrate with somebody. So Metropolitan, Mojave Water Agency, IEUA, all these water agencies, we're bringing new money, new water, and new pipelines to the table. And I haven't seen a conflict in the water industry that can't be solved with one of those 3 assets. So we actually are making other projects pencil where they don't pencil today. And that's, I think, the secret sauce here, is that Southern California has a massive resource, and it's not just our groundwater bank. There are other groundwater banks in the Mojave that have almost as much water as we do that has not been tapped. We haven't even looked for it. So there's a massive amount of resources in Southern California that, if we step back and look carefully at how we're financing these projects to open up additional resources, I think we can make a difference. I will say, this governor, I worked for a governor who made infrastructure the centerpiece of his entire career as governor. We did the strategic growth plan. We proposed an $11 billion bond that included half of it was dedicated to Temperance Flats, Sites Reservoir, Los Vaqueros, and the Delta Conveyance Project were the 4 projects that we were pushing back 18 years ago, right? We're 20 years later. We still haven't gotten the financing for them. Los Vaqueros fell out because the economics didn't work. Temperance Flats fell out because the economics didn't work. Sites Reservoir is going to fall out if they don't figure out how to make the economics work. If the state simply looked at Sites Reservoir and said, we're going to make this a reoperation facility where we're going to use the water in the Delta in order to help the ecosystem of the Delta, and then coordinate activities with the CVP and the others, just add those system benefits, you would double the amount of money that's available for Sites Reservoir from the state and the feds. It's capped today. The state investment in sites is capped at 20% because they're not counting system benefits. If they counted system benefits and operated it that way, it would double the amount of funding from the state that's eligible for through Prop 1, and it would double the amount of funding that would come in from the feds. Now you have a smaller problem with sites that can be handled through revenue bonds. Simple decisions like that unlock a massive amount of, a massive amount of resources for the rest of the state. It's how you have to approach the Delta Conveyance as well. Southern California ratepayers are not going to pay $3,000 an acre foot to fix a system to get half the water they're entitled to. They're not going to fix it. And what'll happen, there'll be a catastrophe in the Delta, and then somebody will come in and fix it. It was after Katrina that Governor Schwarzenegger and Senator Feinstein got together and said, we're going to do $4 billion and fix 100 of the worst sites of the levee failures. And they did it. Every disaster creates an opportunity to actually break the rules. This governor has 2 years left, and he's done more than the last 5 governors combined on water infrastructure. If he can't do it, no one is going to do it. On that ominous note.
Yeah. Mic drop.